Oh, just make sure over here I see on the Twitch channel, make sure it is starting to stream because nothing is more awkward than it not being there. But
It's
it
just chatting
looks
it
like
up.
just chatting it up. That's all we're doing. We're just chatting. There was a network error. I'll just try to reload the player as we go through this. It's better to work out the technical things at the beginning versus the end, wouldn't you say?
I would think so.
Um,
I've had professors go through class realizing they forgot to record, 10 minutes before class ends. So,
that's the worst. Um, Maybe what I also. Oh, there we are. Okay, great. I see it right there. Um, Hello. Could you please introduce yourself?
of course, my name is Tricia White. I am a second semester MA candidate in the Nonproliferation and Terrorism Studies program at the Middlebury Institute, and I'm also a graduate research assistant with the Center for Nonproliferation Studies.
So I wanted to say right here, thank you so much for joining me, Tricia, and taking a few
Of
minutes
course.
out of as the semester gets close to the end. We're all so busy. But I wanted to say before we start talking about the things that we're talking about today, we're going to be talking about some issues that are very serious,
Mhm.
that involve people's lives, life and death for some people.
Right.
And you work with this all of the time. In order for us to have a conversation that's not just full of negativity and angst, we both have to take a bit of a step back to
Mhm.
to be able to have a conversation that's not so down. But I want to
Right.
make sure that I recognize that the things that we're talking about are very, very serious. Even if we have an lighthearted at times conversation, the topics are very, very serious.
Yes, I completely agree.
So, one of the things that you are working with, and a thing that's fascinating to me, is what's referred to as open source intelligence. And I'm going to describe to you a little bit about why I understand about open source intelligence, and please correct me if I've got it wrong in any way. So, from what I understand about open source intelligence, it's all of the things that are out there on social media, on the internet, pictures, whatever it is, that are publicly shared, and then experts such as yourself and researchers look at that in a different way than just, oh, it's my friends doing something. You're trying to learn something about perhaps bad actors or
Mhm.
enemies of our country that threaten our national safety. Is that sort of what open source intelligence is?
Yes, absolutely. It's anything that we have access to without it being classified or unavailable for, private security reasons. We can look at it. If you can look at it on the internet, we're probably using it. And also, I think something that people also kind of leave out is it's not just the internet. We also have access to satellite imagery. There's lots of companies that share that imagery to us, and we have great partnerships with. So that's also a really key part of it, especially for open source intelligence in my field in particular with nonproliferation, because when we're looking at missile programs and nuclear weapons programs, satellite imagery is really, really key, right? Because so much of what we're looking for is classified. But then you can also use open source in reporting, right? So you have like the New York Times Visual Investigations team who does open source reporting on, different government or Congress people and things like that, breaking stories. So there's definitely a spectrum, and different parts of the open source techniques are really, really valuable to different ways that you report on a story. Yeah, that's right.
As an undergraduate student, is this something that you imagined that was even possible or that people were doing? How did you discover it and what was that like for you?
So I went to the University of Georgia as an undergraduate student. So I was definitely, we have a research center there that also does security. So I was definitely looped into wanting to study security. I think though that there's jokes about this online that more people do OSINT research than they realize, right? So you meet somebody, then you go home and you look up their parents' names, and then you find the house that they lived in when they were a kid, and all of a sudden you know so much information about this person, right? Like I used to go home and look up my professors, and you can see, on the Federal Elections Committee who they donated to and things like that. A lot of information is very publicly available. Just everybody needs to keep that in mind all the time. So I was kind of just doing this casually. And then I was working at the Federation of American Scientists, which is based out of DC. And they also do open source work there. And so Matt Corda, my mentor, really pushed me to get into the field and taught me a lot. And then I was attracted to the Middlebury program because of the wonderful, wonderful people they have working in OSINT, like my boss, Jeffrey Lewis. So it was kind of on my radar. I didn't think I would be very good at it when I was learning like the actual OSINT techniques and, using Photoshop and learning how to use GIS. But there's also an underlying part, which is looking on social media and looking just on the regular old internet that I think that I am probably pretty good at, if I can say so. So we all bring something different to the OSINT. My other team members, they can do the GIS and all of the coding things, but I'm really good at social media.
When I was talking to Dr. Lewis, who is, you're right, he is an amazing, amazing person and so great at his job and really keeps a good balance of the work that he's doing, the importance, but the
Mhm.
humor that can come from it as well. He said that
Right.
same thing. Everybody has something to contribute to open source intelligence, whether it's someone who knows exactly how a large piece of machinery works, they might be able to
Hmm.
identify that from a picture that you share, or someone like yourself who is really, really good at doing social media. And that brings us right to the thing that I was so excited to talk to you about today, which was this platform we've heard so much about over the past few years. It's called TikTok.
Yes.
I discovered TikTok because as a social media person, I'm like, oh, what's this platform about? Let's look at what this is. I should know about it. And so I saw it and I didn't quite get it. But then it was in the December or maybe November of 2019, I really started, my For You page really became about me. And when that algorithm really learned what I liked to see and what entertained me on TikTok, then it clicked. I love the platform. It has, I think, a misunderstood reputation for people who don't use it, that it's all about dances or fun or comedy sketches, but it really
Hmm.
is about anything and everything. Where did you meet TikTok?
I also met TikTok during the pandemic. I was pretty against it at first, only because I am terminally online. I really didn't feel like I needed another like app to consume all of my time. But I was in quarantine and just finally gave in. And it took me a minute, right? You have to cater your For You page. You have to swipe, you have to engage and make sure it gets to what you want. But now I get really good movie reviews and podcasts and all of my craft things that I want to do. So I got into TikTok during quarantine like everybody else. I tried deleting it. I deleted it for a few months and then I went back to school and it was all online and I was like, I might as well just have it, right? I might as well just know what's going on because it becomes another thing where culture is building on the app and there's language and jokes that you don't know and I don't like to be left out of those because I like to know what's going on. So I re-downloaded it and I've had it since.
You made a tweet. It was as I was doing some open source intelligence to prepare for our conversation. One of the things that really, really caught my attention that you had shared when you made that joke. Oh, I like it, Picasso, which is one of my like favorite TikToks from about a month
Exactly.
ago.
See?
And so you made that reference in a tweet. I knew that you enjoyed TikTok as much as I did, and so that was what. So you're right. It's this culture. You're on this. It's a
Mhm.
community. It's a community.
And everyone can do OSINT. You're learning about me and your research. You're analyzing what I'm interested in. So you totally know. Yeah, it is a community though.
And so one of the things that you've been using it for and looking at it, if I understand correctly, is to look a little bit about what's happening on the ground in Ukraine with the Russia's war
Mhm.
in Ukraine and all of the terrible, terrible things that are going on there. What have you seen on TikTok that has resonated with you?
Yeah, so TikTok is a little bit trickier than a lot of the other social media apps simply because the search function is really different. So, at the beginning of the war, prior to the invasion, so many people knew that an invasion was imminent. We didn't know exactly when it was going to happen, but people were predicting it was because people in Russia and along the border of Ukraine were seeing buildups of Russian military units along the road, right? They were seeing tanks, they were seeing infantry fighting vehicles, they were seeing all of these military vehicles and encampments in Russia along the roads leading into Ukraine. And they were posting them online because at that time, we weren't sure if there was going to be a war or anything like that. There weren't going to be like very drastic political repercussions for the people posting them. So we saw that going on for a few weeks prior to the invasion. And then we started looking at satellite imagery along the border. And if you're familiar, we had an image published with the Washington Post that showed a military unit right outside of Belgorod. And so that for me, because the search function is so difficult, I can't, I tried, honestly, I tried catering my For You page to get the Russian and Ukrainian, tank talk onto my page, and for whatever reason, it didn't work, which was very odd to me. That's never happened. I always end up getting something on my For You page that I've looked up. And so I was actually just searching Belgorod in the Russian alphabet in TikTok and seeing what videos came up. So that's how we found a video that confirmed the location of this military unit that we identified on the 22nd. And then we continued to keep track of that location. And that's where we saw the traffic build up on the 24th, headed towards the border, probably from like civilians in their cars being stopped because of the military unit moving. And so then from there, I just continue to try and use TikTok. And the easiest way to do it, you can't search by location like you can on Instagram. You can't even search by date. Like, so if you're trying to tell your friend, oh, I saw this video, good luck finding it. So the thing that I did was, hashtag tank in Russian, hashtag tank in Ukrainian, the different locations. And then it really just took me swiping and being on TikTok, watching these, very devastating videos to try and see what I could pull and what could be helpful to what our part of helping with Ukraine was, which was geolocating and identifying where troops were moving and things like that.
Is this the first from work there at the James Martin Center time that TikTok has been so important in some of this work? Did it get a new level of notice this time around?
I would say so. Because I'm second semester, I only started working at the center last semester, in the fall of 2021. But I would say overall, this is, one of the first very large conflicts that we've seen in the past few years, especially just since COVID. Um, and TikTok has kind of come in at the same time. For me, it was the first time I've used TikTok. It's also the first time I've worked on something outside of like an ongoing project, right? This was all happening in real time. So at that point, it's just a matter of you're not really going through like your everyday procedure. It's what do I have access to and what can I pull from it? So I think that TikTok is definitely new to this. I'm hoping that the way that the app is set up changes just based on how it's being used now. I would like if the search function got better personally, because it would be more beneficial for us. I don't know if they'll do that, but I would say yeah, it's definitely the first time it's made this big of a difference in OSINT for sure.
Are you the TikTok expert now around the center? They knock on your door and be like, "Hey, Tricia, can you get that TikTok fired up? We got to look this thing up."
I mean, basically, yes, because there's one other person who's in their early 20s on our team. And at the time, he now has a TikTok. I told him he needed to get one, but he didn't. So I was the only one who had it. I was the only one who knew how it worked. So, yes, I did end up being that person. And I was also the one Instagramming, right? Um, but yeah, I would say I am the resident young person, resident TikTok person for sure.
So, for people who may not be as familiar with TikTok as you and I joyfully are, there's a few components of it. There's the For You
Mm,
page, which, as we've mentioned, it can be curated and is designed just for you based on how you've interacted with the platform.
mm,
And it's feeding you new content from with the algorithm. Then you have a following page where accounts that you've decided you can follow, you can swipe over, you can see just the people that you're following, check in with your friends or communities that you're developing. And then there's
mm,
various tools on there. There's stitching where you can add your content to content that exists. There's duetting where you can mirror and join in others. There's filters and all that sort of stuff. And TikTok is really
mm,
based, if you're creating some original content on there, as from sound first. Like if you're going to make a dance video, you pick the dance, or if you're going to lip sync. So it's really based on sound first, unlike other platforms which are very image heavy. It's really based on the sound. But there is also a growing and more importance over the past year or so, I would say, on the live part of TikTok,
mm,
where you can go live. And you mentioned, I think, in a tweet that you said that TikTok was going to stop allowing live updates, people to post live onto TikTok from Ukraine and Russia. And that was something, I think it was on a Twitter tweet that you said that that was something that you didn't think was a good idea. What is the
mm.
power of live TikTok?
The power of live TikTok is that we know it's happening in real time, right? Because if you're using the actual TikTok camera, besides the filters, it's really hard to manipulate the footage, at least if you're doing it on live. If you're doing a TikTok on live, you have to use their camera function. And so that means that we are looking at whatever the camera is looking at, and that can be really helpful, right? There's still a level of having to sort through that information and making sure it has, authenticity to it, right? It's not being staged or anything like that. But it's so valuable in just being a jumping point or a launching point for us to look at something in real time. Because what was happening a lot at the beginning of the war is we were seeing videos on TikTok and Telegram that were actually from Ukraine in 2014. And it's hard when it's just being reposted over and over and over again, and you know where it's located and you know there's conflict there, or protest or however. Make sure that what you're looking at is from the right time. And so live video is really helpful because it's kind of easier to tell that it's happening in real time. I was really stressed when certain companies were pulling out of Russia because it meant it was going to affect what we had access to. We wouldn't be able to see what was happening along the border and if there were larger movements coming in. There was also, they had their road mobile ICBMs out for an exercise for a parade, right? And if we didn't have access to video footage from inside Russia, that this story started getting reported on, we went back and said, no, this is for a military parade. They do this every year. It's completely normal. They start practicing. And it was just the timing of it happening during the invasion. There was a little bit of panic online, right? So if we lose almost that privilege of being able to see inside of this country and what they're doing, then it really affects how we are able to hold other media organizations accountable and hold governments accountable. So I understand the desire to want to pull out of Russia and for them to have repercussions for their actions, but at the same time, we need to balance that with like isolating the Russian community as a whole.
You spend considerable time actively looking for and looking at and watching and experiencing really traumatic things. How do you balance that? How do you do the work that you need to do, but also keep your mental health where it should be?
No, that is a really great question that I am learning the answer to. Um, this war in particular, because I only started working in this field, it's the first time that I'm really experiencing it in real time and seeing, this field for what it is. And I am grateful that I am getting that exposure at this stage in my career, not later, because I want to be able to learn how to cope with it now. Um, but I don't really know. I think that my boss, Dr. Lewis, is really good about making sure that we are all taking care of ourselves and we spend a little bit of time outside of work, socializing and talking and doing things together. But for the most part, I am very close to my family, so I'm very lucky I'm able to call back home to them in Georgia and talk to them. I live in beautiful Monterey at the Middlebury Institute campus, and so I'm able to get outside. I try and spend as much time outside as possible, but I'm still trying to figure that out as well. So I'll get back to you on that one.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
What is it like? Do you feel, is there a moment, if you're watching a video or you're watching a live, when it's only you who are seeing it with your professional filter, and you're like, I'm the only one who knows this? And then, of course, you're going to go and share it with other people. But what's that moment like when you're the only one who may see something?
I think it's scary because I'm so new to this, I'm still doubting a lot of what I'm doing, right? I have to decide if it's important. There's a fear that I'm looking at something really important and I don't realize how valuable it is and I swipe past it or I rule it out. And that's stressful because I want to be as helpful as possible and I want to show that, I can contribute in a meaningful way. So when I am looking at something and I feel like maybe I'm the first one to look at it, I find a video from some random Ukrainian who normally only posts car videos, and now he's posting videos of what he's seeing in his community, and I think that can be valuable. I bring it to my team, quite frankly. I bring it to them. We look at it together. I really like how we bounce ideas off of each other. I think that is really, really important in OSET You cannot do OSINT by yourself in a meaningful analytic way. You have to share your hypotheses with other people. You have to see what you're missing, and you can show them what you're seeing, so you get a bigger picture. Um, but mostly, the feeling is just save the video as soon as possible. Because if I'm looking at something new, I don't want it to get taken down. You can't just add it to your favorites folder on TikTok. You need to download the video. And that's also something I'm learning is if I'm finding information on the internet that I think is valuable, I need to download it immediately. So that's usually my feeling is download, tell the team.
Nice. And then actionable policies and all that stuff will come
Mm-hmm.
after that.
That comes later.
I want to be very mindful. I could hang out and chat with you all day. It's fascinating the work that you do, but I have just a couple more questions. One of the ones
Mm-hmm.
is, as you are reaching this part of your career and becoming more yourself, you're developing your own identity and what you want to do as a profession. Do you have hope for humanity, or are we burning our planet down around us and you find it difficult to stay hopeful?
I have hope in the work that I'm doing. I've always been very altruistic about this field, I think, right? I support nuclear weapons disarmament, global zero. I would like a world with no nuclear weapons. Do I think that's going to happen in my lifetime? No. But I do have hope for a lot of the work that we're doing, right? There's always going to be really, really horrible things that happen in the world. But if we have people who are trying to put the work in to, right those wrongs and share that information and give that information to the right people who do have power and who can do something about it, then I have hope for that, right? I think that OSINT is emerging into a larger field. It's always existed in different ways, but now with the rise of social media, I think it has so much to offer, and I'm really hopeful about that. Um, I think it is exhausting, and I don't know how long I'm going to last in the field looking at these types of videos and things. Um, I do really value my work, and I'm hopeful that I can contribute uh, to policy in a meeting, even if I'm not writing the policy, right? If I'm sharing the information that changes policy, then that's good enough for me. And I think that's what a lot of people in this community look for.
My last question for you today, Tricia, is you mentioned it before. There's so much of our own data and information out there that we may not even be aware of. I don't want to use, I'm going to use the word just to introduce the question, but I don't want to frame it in this way. Warnings for people. What should you be aware of as you have a growing online persona and identity? Are there boundaries? How do you set those boundaries for what you want to do online?
Um, Most social media online, accounts and things have servers where they save your information. Just because you delete something on your phone does not mean it is deleted from the whole internet of things. Always have two-factor authentication on all of your accounts. Change your password for every single thing that you have. That was a recent one for me. Encrypt your passwords on a separate app. It's mostly right now for me just about like information security. I'm already on the internet too much. There's enough of me out there already that I can only go so far in terms of like hiding my identity. But if you're securing your accounts and your information, that would be my first warning. Change your passwords.
Change those passwords regularly and get that password app. Tricia, thank you so much. Welcome to the Institute. I'm so glad that
Thank
you're
you.
a part of what's happening out there at Monterey. I hope that we get to talk more as your work continues. I'm going to end our
Absolutely.
stream here on Twitch, but we'll stay on Discord just to wrap it up and say goodbye.
Okay, great. Thank you.